to Battle Rankings. I'm Svetlana, and today I am joined by Dane. Tell me about yourself.
Hi, my name is Dane Van Orden. I'm the proprietor and one of the primary operators of Creative Pursuit Games Inc. in Leesburg. That is Northern Virginia. We do have a sort of informal gaming club here. We occasionally have been known to call ourselves Novacom or Northern Virginia Area Command, but often we just describe ourselves as the Creative Pursuit Games gaming group.
All right, awesome. So when did you first start playing tabletop games?
Oh my gosh. I can't count that high. I don't have that many fingers.
Do you have to use your toes too?
I don't have that many toes.
Okay.
I suppose the first things that would qualify as tabletop games would be certain card games, board games like Axis and Allies, and I go all the way back to late elementary school, early middle school for those. The first proper tabletop game I got into was Warhammer 40,000, and that would have been, oh my gosh, around 2003. I suppose I was a natural target for that kind of thing. And after that, that was all she wrote.
And then what first got you into them?
A certain interest in history, I suppose, militaria, science fiction. I have a long family interest in painting and modeling. My grandfather would scratch build metalwork models and did plastic models. My father did those. I got into those at an early age. So the natural nexus of painting and modeling and then actually playing a game with the things that you've painted and modeled was a very attractive idea. So, naturally, again, like many young men, I tripped over Warhammer 40,000, and after that, it was all she wrote into miniatures war games of all sorts.
Oh, okay. So it's more than just 40,000, Team Yankee, and Flames of War.
Oh, Flames of War and Team Yankee were the really interesting ones. I had always been interested in doing some sort of historical-based game. So when Flames of War started gaining popularity in the early 2000s, I did hop on board with that and was very interested and very involved in my gaming group at the time. I had a brief hiatus. Work got in the way for a little while, and when I came back, there was no Flames of War anymore. Everyone had moved on to War Machine or other various games. But when we started our own store here, that was one of the few things I knew I wanted to bring back because I really liked Flames, and there hadn't been a group in the area. So I said, we're going to start doing Flames again. I didn't realize at the time quite how much, but it hasn't been a problem. Very much enjoyed that.
All right, awesome. So did you kind of start the club, or was it kind of just like a group that kind of just like was inspired by just a snowball effect of players kind of attracted to it?
Well, again, the group that I first started with, getting on for about 20 years ago now, was started by a family at their own small sort of multi-purpose hobby store. They had one gaming day, and one of the sons was particularly interested in Warhammer, so they started carrying it. He started a play group, and I got involved in that. My brother got involved in that, and we just sort of kept going with them. And in some ways, I never really left that group. Our own group here is kind of a spin-off of that. That general purpose hobby store decided that miniatures games weren't really the right fit for it a few years ago. And that's where I stepped in and said, well, they are absolutely a right fit for me. And is there some way that we could do this ourselves? So we looked into it, and we did. And we started Creative Pursuit Games, and we've perpetuated the gaming group in Leesburg. Expanded into other things. Obviously, we're full-time gaming here, so all 6 days a week we're open. You might see games on the tables, of all sorts. So,
and I've been to several different game stores where like that's kind of it. Like, you see the models and you see them people always playing games, and I think those are some of the best stores to go to, honestly.
right. Now,
oh yeah. So what games do you guys play? Is it mostly Flames of War, or is there kind of like a mix of other games?
So we do. There is a great variety. Obviously, we do Warhammer 40,000. That's one of the big ones. Age of Sigmar, Kill Team, the whole suite of Games Workshop games. We're also one of the few continuing War Machine communities. That was one of the big sort of resurgent companies to come up in the early 2000s as alternatives to Games Workshop, and War Machine had a very good run of it there for a while. They're actually about to start their 4th edition. So that's another one that we do. We have an active War Machine community. Flames of War and Team Yankee are some of our more significant ones. We do, oh my gosh, a lot of that. that's one of our big things. Our gaming group, at least those of us with an interest in historicals, also dabbles a little bit in naval games. I've been part of an initiative for a few years to work on one of those. So who knows? Fingers crossed. We might actually have something worthy of publication in the near future. So that'll be very interesting. And then, somewhat unusually for a game store, we are also a paintball pro shop. For a number of us, you might call us complete war gamers. Some days we like to kick back in our chair and be the armchair general, and some days we like to strap on our boots and hop in the trenches and actively get shot at. Just reminds us what our pieces go through on a daily basis. But that's a lot of fun too. So we supply paintball equipment, and we even do restoration, repair, or customization on paintball equipment, especially the markers themselves. So that's a little unusual, maybe worthy of note. But you're probably most interested in our Flames of War and Team Yankee community.
Yeah, for sure. But that's definitely an interesting interesting combination of niches.
That's us. We're just a combination of niches.
I'm sure it keeps every day exciting. It makes
there's
work
never
exactly what you want it to be.
There's never a dull moment.
So how many people do you generally have coming to play?
Oh my gosh. Again, I don't have that many fingers. It sort of depends on the system, the day, or even the season. Naturally, we draw a significant college crowd. So during the school year, they will be elsewhere. During the summer and winter, they come home. We have let me see here. I would say for big games and tournaments, we typically draw between about 12 and 16, which is good because that's about how many people we can actually put on tables here. And of course, they'll be different for the different formats. We have some people who play Flames, but not Yankee. We have a few people who play Team Yankee, but not Flames. We have people who will join us for tournaments, but aren't particularly interested in big games or special narrative events. We have people who are only interested in one-off games, campaigns, big games, who don't like to come to the tournament events. So on the whole, it's a fairly significant community, at least compared to anything I've been involved with in my life. So we're obviously very thankful, very grateful for that. But as far as an actual head count, I could not begin to give you one.
Oh, no worries. Do you have any idea of like how many new players that you've been able to like? I mean, obviously not necessarily like hard numbers, but are you able to bring in a bunch of new players with just like the amount of accessibility to the games?
I would say most of our players at this point are new players. We have a few legacy gamers from my original group, but since we opened our doors, it has very much rejuvenated tabletop gaming, at least in our immediate area, and many of our players are brand new. Many of our Flames of War and Team Yankee players, this is their first tabletop game. They're not coming to it through another gateway, another vector. Many people, part of my story, part of the story of many people, who grew up in the 90s, the early 2000s, was we got into tabletop gaming through Games Workshop games because that is what existed at the time. We discovered other things as they were created or rejuvenated. For a lot of the generation that we're bringing in, they're coming into this world where there are alternatives, and many of them choose to do Flames of War or Team Yankee out of the gate. It's inexpensive, it's familiar to them. Many of them get into other games once they're in the door, but we do actually bring in a significant number of new players.
I think the Team Yankee Flames of War community is also generally very forgiving to new players as they're learning the rules and kind of figuring out the game. And it's not nearly as harsh as what some other gaming communities could be.
It's not an overly complicated list building system. It doesn't layer rules the way some games have been doing in recent years, and I think that that's very attractive to new players. I think it can be off-putting when you pick up a book and need to sift through several layers of rules which you need to keep track of as you're playing your force. It's very nice to have basically everything printed on a set of stat cards or on very nearly a single page of a book if you're referencing that. It's not bad for us old hands as well, who are keeping track of many different rule sets at one time and have work, life, careers, things like that. Requires a little less bandwidth, and for that we're very grateful. For that reason, I probably wind up playing more Flames or Team Yankee than other rule sets at the moment, because it takes a little less bandwidth. So easier to keep up with.
So you were talking about different tournaments and different events that you come up with. What are your group events?
The main things that we would run, apart from just simple open play, which we do on several different nights of the week, the weekends, the three main formats that have worked out for us are tournament events, campaign events, and big games.
Okay.
Naturally, most of your viewers will understand immediately the difference between those. But for the sake of completeness, if someone's just tuning in, the tournament events, obviously we run about 3 or 4 rounds, round robin or Swiss pairings. You'll pair people, they'll play for about 2.5 to 3 hours, and then they'll reset, they'll do it again. There will be a tournament winner at the end, and that's all she wrote. For a campaign, that will be played over several weeks. Sometimes you play for rankings and accomplishments. Sometimes you simply play for a plot and you contribute to your side in a war. For big games, similar thing. You just do it over one day, but you are one player on a very large table. We have been known to do multi-front big games where we will actually have more than one large table set up. I think the last time we had 2 tables 16 feet long set up as 2 different fronts in a battlefield, and we play for about 5 hours. We've done enough of these. 5 hours is about the right amount of time. After that, people start getting tired and fidgety, and so you just play one large event, and it's a huge amount of fun. Generally appoint table commanders. There's a chain of command. Has to be, otherwise it just turns into a terrible free-for-all.
So is it kind of like the team events then?
Well, team events, like for tournaments, that's a different matter entirely.
Oh, okay, okay.
We You will have many different types of tournament events. Some are just single entrant. You build an army, you show up, and they're basically like chess games turned up to 11. With a team tournament, you might either be a part of one large monolithic side, like you have a red team and a blue team who shows up. For Flames, that'd be the Germans versus the Allied powers. For Team Yankee, NATO and the Warsaw Pact. And you will not only play against the other players, but we will keep track of all over victories per side. Sometimes we'll let that influence the choice of missions that come up. Sometimes we'll actually include little narrative blurbs, even in tournaments, that give you a progression of the plot. Some team tournaments will use a different format where it's a little more abstract. You're not necessarily playing a side in the war. You just show up as part of a group of players, and you attempt to do well as both an individual and a team. Any number of ways you can do it.
So you kind of talked about the story of the group a little bit earlier with you kind of taking on the previous clubs or the previous stores club and being like, I have a space here, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, I actually worked for them for a little while in high school and college. That was how I kind of cut my teeth in the industry. And on 2 occasions, I had to think of a way to refresh and rejuvenate that group. When the business finally decided they didn't really want to pursue stocking miniatures games, we said, okay, instead of trying to fix this again, why don't we just cut out and try and do this ourselves? And so, yeah, I'm old friends with the owners. I talked to them and negotiated to just buy the gaming section. And so we transplanted it, a few blocks down the road and started a shop that would focus on just this aspect. And we got, some of the people who were left did come with us to continue doing miniatures games at the new location. We got some people back who had been scattered and lost for years, didn't know if we'd see them again, and they came back, which was really wonderful. And then we started recruiting new people, people who would just walk in off the street or were interested because of something they'd read on the internet, who would just walk in the door. We talked to them. We showed them what we were doing, gave them a demo game or included them in some activity that we had going on in the store. And they've decided to join us, become a part of the club. And that's always very nice, very gratifying.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what is the travel span of some of these people that come to you?
So we're in Leesburg, which is very nearly the most northerly point of Virginia. We're in about a 30 to 40 minute drive of Washington, D.C. So we do draw from all over Northern Virginia. Our reach does extend into Maryland and West Virginia a little bit on a daily basis. But if we do a large tournament event, we'll draw people from Ohio, Pennsylvania, Delaware, North Carolina, South Carolina, and all over Virginia. I've been surprised by how far people will travel for a good Flames or Team Yankee event.
So you can drum up quite a crowd for some of your tournaments then.
Well, again, we are a smaller venue at the moment. Generally, we'll sit between 12 to 16 for a good sizable event. Sometimes they'll be smaller than that. Sometimes I'll be waitlisting people. Certainly Northern Virginia is a hot spot for Games Workshop games. So it's actually, I think, every time we've run a Rogue Trader event for Warhammer 40,000, there's been a wait list. it's I'm stopping people at the door. Sorry, no, there's no room. We'll you can come play if someone's a no-show. But that can be very popular. But no, for Flames or Team Yankee, if we run a big event, announce it a decent amount of time in advance, we can draw a fairly significant crowd.
It was a shop in Mechanicsville. It's just north of Richmond.
Okay.
It's like it was a historical gaming shop, but from what I lived down in Richmond for about 5 months last year.
Okay.
For some stuff, and I would go up to that shop because it wasn't too far from where I was staying, and it seemed that there was a significant pull towards like historical gaming and just like modeling in general, especially for the group that enjoys the living history aspect that is very rich in
Sure.
along that area.
Yeah, you do have significant interest in reenacting in Virginia. Northern Virginia can get a little bit cosmopolitan. You don't necessarily have it's very interesting. We sort of live on the border between two states. You have Northern Virginia, which is everything east of us, getting closer to DC, which is very much its own culture, its own thing.
Yeah, yes.
South
DC
or west of
was
us.
at its own pace.
Yes, you go south or west of us though, and then you have Virginia. You have a little bit of old Virginia, and that feels very different. We're sort of interesting in Leesburg because we're right on that outer rim where Washington, D.C. starts giving way to Virginia. So we get a little bit of both crowds.
That I'm sure that's an interesting interactions that you see there sometimes.
It is interesting, but we seem to have come up with a facility and a business model where everyone feels welcome. You'll get people from very different walks of life, very different histories, very different career paths, and they can all come here and talk about their shared interests, usually wargaming. So it is very interesting. We get a lot of new and different ideas mixing.
Which that's always good, especially if you're trying to come up with new ideas to contribute to the business model in a positive way.
Absolutely, and the community as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So where can you be found?
Well, like I say, we're in Leesburg, Virginia. We're very nearly the most northerly part of Virginia, within about 30 to 40 minutes of DC, east of DC. So we're very nearly at the intersection of West Virginia, Virginia, and Maryland. It's not far from Harper's Ferry, which
and then like Facebook, Discord.
If you're looking for us on the internet, we do have our own webpage, creativepursuitgames.com. Most of that on a Google site. Forgive us, we're still a little bit new and a little bit cheap. But you can absolutely find us on Facebook, and we do have a sizable and fairly active Discord server. We find that is a very lively, active platform for most of our gaming group. Allows easy communication, not quite as many opinions and distractions as you sometimes get on other platforms.
Cool. How do you recommend people finding a gaming group?
Well, back in the day, it was very difficult. You had to go through slow loading web pages and comb through the yellow pages to maybe hopefully find a group in your area. These days the internet is such a mature and powerful tool. Use the internet. Do a search. Use Google or DuckDuckGo or any number of the tools that are just at your fingertips. And you do that, certainly in our area, you'll come up with any number of options, and then drive by, walk in, compare. It's so easy these days. No one has any idea how good they've got it compared to how we were when we were starting this type of thing. It's no, it's easy. Use the web. We're just about all on there.
And then how do you suggest people start up their own group?
Oh my gosh. Well, people starting their own groups. I know for me, for my part, as a store owner, we will always respond very positively to people who show initiative and energy. Having a store to base a game group around can be a very positive experience, I think. Naturally, the store has an economic interest in having gaming groups in, but most miniatures gamers are going to be purchasing models anyway, so that's a fairly easy sell to a store. It helps a lot when someone does show initiative, when they organize events, when they do a lot of the legwork for you. Then all a store owner has to do is go, looks good, okay, off we go, approved. And
I'll put you in the back room with all the tables, or wherever their gaming space is.
Well, it also helps when stores actually do respond to gamer needs. For instance, we're an example of a store that was started by gamers. We always knew we wanted to support a community. So we planned from the beginning to have a section for open play all the time. We have permanent tables that are there for nothing but gaming. Excuse me. So stores that are already receptive to the needs of a gaming community will be the easiest targets for starting a gaming group. As far as trying to start a group in places where there isn't a store, going as far back, as the as the 90s, when I was first trying to, run Axis and Allies games or play any of the various card games that existed. Public library. A lot of public libraries have resources, have space that people can use, certainly on the weekends. Before I had a proper store that I was involved with, I would simply reserve space in a private room at the library. We'd bring in Axis and Allies or whatever we were doing, set up on a table, and we would play there. A lot of libraries will invite people to post recruiting advertisements to bring people into a gaming group. I hate to shoot myself in the foot as sort of a non-online vendor, but there are plenty of places to get your gaming accoutrement online. You don't, strictly speaking, need a store to support you, even if that does make life easier. There are any number of ways to start a group. It just takes determination, it takes dedication, it takes being willing to accept setbacks. You will have any number of setbacks. You will have any number of disagreements between individuals that you have to weather, maturely with determination. You have to be willing to forgive people when they have small disagreements, or you will find yourself without a gaming group very quickly. But you do all of those things, you weather some of the difficulties, and you will be able to make a gaming group. Isn't rocket scientist, isn't rocket scientist. Good Lord, can we edit that out? It
um,
isn't rocket science. Clearly, I can do it, and I can't speak English. So,
so on the point of having somebody interested in starting with and working with a store, how might someone try to, if the models are not at that store and it's kind of just like in a good convenient location, like there's a store near where I live, I'm not going to find Team Yankee models there. How might you start up that conversation with that store owner to maybe have them carry some supply?
what I would say is, again, store owners respond to organization, determination, interest. I don't know any store owner alive who would not bring in a range if there were people interested in playing and actively playing. Ask if your local store owner is interested in ordering supplies for you. If you can start things out as a mail order service, if you're willing to show that you will buy from them, that you will keep coming back, that you will keep interest, that's the sort of thing that will convince a store owner to actively carry product. That and actually, Battlefront Miniatures does an excellent job helping store owners and local community leaders get started with their product. For us, when we were getting started, when I was first scouting around, talking to different vendors, looking to start the store, Battlefront was one of the first few phone calls I made, and they made it very easy for us to ease our way into it. They didn't push us to buy everything right away. We started with a small section, and as we were progressively more and more successful in selling the product line, developing the community, we were able to scale our section up. We were able to build up in a very easy way. They were one of my favorite vendors to work with, actually. And that is up against some very tough competition. There are some excellent gaming companies out there, and they really made it a very nice experience for us.
And I'm sure that's a very competitive section. The working with vendors can be a very competitive experience sometimes.
It certainly can. You have some vendors who have not enough product for whatever reason for the people who want it, and some of them will sort of give you the cold shoulder, give their attention to the highest bidder. Other vendors are going to be very willing to work with you, no matter how large or small a community or business you are. I always found that Battlefront was very accommodating, very willing to work with us. It's one of the reasons we continued to promote their product. Was they made it easy, they made it desirable, they made it a pleasant experience, and everyone wanted to play the game anyway. So that just sort of worked out.
Any closing thoughts before we sign off?
Sure. One of the things I've noticed in some areas in Flames of War and Team Yankee communities is this is very often a sort of an old guy's hobby. There are you'll see a lot of us with maybe not very much hair left, or who are going gray. I'm positively a young pup compared to some people in the hobby, but very unusually, we managed to cultivate a very young community here. We have players, active players, who are in high school. We have active players who are in college. We have a relatively young community. And I know that that's something that Battlefront is always interested in doing. because like Cadillac or Lincoln, you do occasionally have to pause and say, do we want to be marketing to a younger crowd? Because that is what will keep the hobby going ultimately.
Yeah, you have to keep the hobby going somehow, and you're not going to be able to survive off of a retiring community forever. You have to bring in younger groups of people to replace whatever is lost.
Certainly not. We certainly don't want to exclude anyone, from a retiring community. These are people with years of experience and wisdom. They're great fun.
Yeah. We still need but when the community has this, I guess, a stigma of it's a lot of older guys.
Yes,
you need to still have that newer crowd.
It is very important. It has been very important to our approach to this to be inclusive to younger players, to accommodate some of the interests of younger players. We try very, very hard to avoid any kind of gatekeeping. One of our mottos is, we're here to build sparring partners, not victims. We have no interest in just crushing opponents for the sake of crushing opponents. We're here to build people up, to really teach them the game and try and bring them up to the level of some of these very experienced players, because it's more fun that way. You get new points of view, new variety, new ways of looking at the game, thinking about the game, new ways of reflecting on history. That's always very interesting. And it leads into another one of our sort of mantras in our group, which is that there are two types of gaming. There's gaming to enrich your life, and there's gaming to define your life. Now, many of us here on the channel, tuned into the channel, who play these games obsessively, regularly, we'd be hypocrites if we said it's not okay to game to define your life. But what we always need to remember is the reason we went to do this in the first place, to make it an enriching experience for our lives. And that's something we always emphasize with new people who come in, is this is meant to be an enriching experience. You should be having fun here. If you're not having fun, we're doing it wrong. So.
Yeah, it's a learning experience, but it's also just a game.
Absolutely. Always treat it as a game. That's exactly what it is. We are still playing with toy soldiers. Never, we it's important to keep that in perspective.
It might not be the toy soldiers you played with when you were a kid, but it's still plastic soldiers.
No, they're definitely not that. They're way more expensive than the toy soldiers I had when I was a kid. And there are more of them somehow.
It just took over a whole entire store. Oops.
Yeah. Oops. We how'd that happen? We have a whole store full of them.
I mean, I thought that, yeah. I mean, some people have basements, other people have stores.
Yes. Yeah. That's a thing. That's a thing. Yes, it was get a house with a basement or get a store. So we got the store. Oh boy, what now?
Well, as long as it's not a job if you're loving it, right?
No, that's not true. Some people have said if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. That is not true. I can now tell you from some experience, it is definitely still work, but it's not so bad if you like what you do.
That's awesome. All right. So if you enjoyed watching today's video, like, subscribe, comment, share it to your community, your local clubs or whatever. And if you want to see your club on one of these interviews, send a message to Battle Rankings. All of our links are on a link tree in the in the description box, and you can send us a message. And I want you to talk about this. Call this person, talk to them, or maybe suggest a topic on something that we should talk about. And maybe the topic was already talked about in the past, and we need to just talk about it again because, you know, it might have been something talked about during V3 that we needed to talk about in V4 again. You never know. So yeah, hit all the fun buttons, and thank you for watching.
Wait, we have buttons? Sorry, we'll edit that out.